Mystery of the Dhaka Student. A decade-long vanishing and the hidden truth, Bangladesh, 2012 to 2022. The mysterious kidnapped student of Dhaka in 2012 reappears after 10 years with disturbing details. In the bustling heart of Dhaka, a young university student stepped out into the fading evening light and vanished almost instantly. No witnesses saw where he went. No cameras captured his final steps. It was as if the city had swallowed him whole. And for the next 10 years, his disappearance became a haunting mystery that refused to fade. Strange clues appeared in the days that followed. Conflicting accounts from classmates, a suspicious phone call hours before he disappeared, and a coded message found later in his notebook. Rumors spread like wildfire. Was it extremists, politics, mistaken identity, or something far stranger? For a decade, the case lived in the shadows. People claimed to see him in distant towns. Anonymous emails were sent to journalists. A man who looked just like him appeared in a blurry border-crossing photo. Each time the investigation reignited, it collapsed again, buried by fear, silence, and secrets. Then, in 2022, a mysterious informant came forward. His testimony changed everything and finally revealed the truth about what happened in those missing 10 years. Tonight, on Mystery Vault 80, we step into the fog of uncertainty surrounding this unsettling disappearance, exploring theories, secrets, and the chilling decade-long gap that baffled investigators. Before we begin, please like, share, and subscribe. Your engagement helps new mysteries reach more curious minds, and your comments shape the direction of future investigations on this channel. Don't hesitate to question, challenge, or propose theories. This community thrives on open analysis and sharp minds. Now, let's walk into the mystery of vanishing in plain sight. The evening the city erased a student. Dhaka is a city of motion, endless crowds, endless noise, endless stories overlapping. So, when someone disappears without a trace, in broad daylight, with thousands of eyes all around, the mystery becomes even more unsettling. Our story begins on March 19, 2012. The sun had just begun to set, casting a golden haze over the university district. Students spilled out of classrooms, heading toward buses, tea stalls, and evening study sessions. Among them was a quiet, sharp-minded student, Rafiq Ahmed, walking with his backpack slung over one shoulder. But observers would later describe something strange about him. He seemed uneasy, not fearful, but alert, as if he was expecting something to happen. At 5:48 p.m., CCTV shows Rafiq slowing down at the campus gate. He checks his phone. His expression changes, not panic, but a moment of realization. He steps outside into the busy street. And from that second onward, the timeline becomes a puzzle of missing pieces. A shop owner recalls seeing him speak to two men. A rickshaw driver insists he saw Rafiq step toward a white microbus. Another witness swears he saw no one at all. 3 accounts, 3 contradictions. And yet, all 3 place Rafiq's fate somewhere between those few seconds of confusion and a vehicle that seemed to appear from nowhere. What makes this case even stranger is the silence that followed. No ransom note, no phone call, no message from Rafiq, not even a rumor that could be verified. It was as if the earth had swallowed him. When investigators searched his room, they found a notebook filled not with answers, but with riddles. Lines crossed out, phone numbers without names, short entries like "they're getting closer" and "is this the last warning?" None explained, none confirmed. Chapter 1 ends with a haunting question. How does someone surrounded by thousands vanish without leaving the smallest possible clue? We dive deeper into the coded clues, the silent witnesses, and the first cracks in the official story. A story that changed each time the police retold it. Signals before the vanishing, strange clues, and unseen watchers. In mystery cases, the disappearance is rarely the true beginning. It's simply the moment everything becomes visible. Chapter 2 pulls us into the quiet, subtle clues that hinted something ominous was forming around Rafiq long before he vanished. The whisper network around him. In late 2011, students recalled that Rafiq had become unusually private. He stayed late in the campus library. He scribbled notes in a small notebook he didn't let anyone read. He sometimes walked home on unfamiliar routes, as if trying to avoid something or someone. Then came the rumors. Some classmates said they saw him speaking to people they didn't recognize, older men who didn't look like students and didn't seem to belong on campus. They lingered in corridors, watched students, and left without explanation. One friend remembered Rafiq saying, "They want something from me. I don't know what," but he never revealed who they were. The notebook full of clues. Inside Rafiq's room, that notebook investigators found became one of the most mysterious elements of the case. It contained crossed-out phone numbers, cryptic symbol, short warnings like "stop asking questions," and a final phrase, "They know." None of it pointed directly to a culprit, but all of it suggested a man under pressure. What he knew, or believed he knew, remains a central mystery. The shadowy approach. 2 weeks before he disappeared, multiple witnesses saw Rafiq approached by 3 men outside a stationery shop. They were described as well-dressed, too calm, speaking in low tones. The encounter lasted under a minute, but afterward Rafiq was visibly shaken. He told a friend, "I should never have gotten involved." But involved in what? Theories spread. Was he researching something sensitive? Did he overhear something he shouldn't have? Or had he become the target of a group operating in plain sight? Mysterious phone activity. The strangest detail. In the days before the disappearance, Rafiq's phone received multiple short calls, only 1 to 2 seconds each, from untraceable numbers. Silent calls. No messages. No voice. Just a signal like a coded warning. Investigators later traced one number to an abandoned flat used by transient groups. Another traced to a SIM purchased with a fake ID. The rest were never identified. Someone was watching him from the shadows, and they wanted him to know. The atmosphere tightens. Ends with more questions than answers. Was Rafiq targeted? Was he secretly investigating something? Or was he caught in the crossfire of an invisible conflict? The mystery deepens as witness accounts collapse into contradictions, and the first hints of a larger cover-up begin to surface. Shadows and contradictions, witnesses, clues, and unanswered questions. The deeper we look into Rafiq's disappearance, the more the story turns from disappearance to enigma. In Chapter 3, we explore the contradictions, hidden clues, and mysterious behaviors surrounding the case. Witnesses who saw differently. One neighbor swore he saw Rafiq enter a side alley near the campus. Another claimed he was already inside a white van nearby. CCTV footage was blurry and inconclusive. Official statements changed multiple times, leaving investigators and the family with no clear picture. Did Rafiq leave willingly? Was he forced? Or had someone else orchestrated a misdirection? The conflicting reports created a fog of uncertainty that obscured the truth for years. The family's frustration. Maryam Ahmed, Rafiq's mother, often expressed frustration that every lead she tried to pursue seemed to disappear. Witnesses went silent. Messages were ignored. Even the phone records appeared to vanish into a bureaucratic limbo. It was as if the city itself wanted to erase Rafiq's trail. The notebook revisited. The notebook found in his room contained short, cryptic entries. "They know where I am. Do not trust anyone. Time is running out." No context. No names. Just hints of pressure and fear. Could these notes have been warnings to himself or messages for someone else? Mystery Vault 80 explores each possible interpretation, leaving viewers with chilling ambiguity. Mysterious calls and movements. Days before the disappearance, Rafiq received multiple calls from unidentified numbers. Investigators later discovered the SIMs had been purchased under fake names and discarded immediately after. Was this a warning, a coded communication, or merely coincidence? Every clue raised more questions than answers. The vanishing begins. By this point, Rafiq was moving through shadows, both physically and metaphorically. Friends noticed his increasing secrecy. He avoided familiar routes, stopped answering calls from trusted classmates, and spoke cryptically about watchers. All these events culminated in the day he disappeared, leaving nothing but faint footprints and riddles for investigators to follow. When a person vanishes in plain sight, how do we even begin to unravel the truth? The vanishing deepens, clues, contradictions, and hidden forces. By Chapter 4, the story of Rafiq Ahmed was no longer just about a missing student. It had become a puzzle full of contradictions, silent witnesses, and signs of a hidden force at work. Conflicting accounts. Witness reports were inconsistent. One neighbor said he saw Rafiq talking to strangers. Another claimed he never left campus that evening. CCTV footage was fuzzy, leaving gaps for multiple interpretations. The mystery grew. How could a person seemingly watched by so many disappear without leaving any clear trace? Mysterious silence. People with possible information refused to speak. Neighbors, classmates, and even security guards hinted at knowledge, but warned that revealing it could be dangerous. Each attempt to clarify events led to more questions than answers. Why were witnesses hesitant? Who were they afraid of? The invisible pressure surrounding Rafiq became almost palpable, suggesting forces beyond ordinary criminals. Clues in the shadows. Even minor details hinted at a larger story. Discarded phone numbers traced to temporary shelters' notebook entries, with cryptic messages, strange movements captured in surveillance, barely noticeable. Each clue was ambiguous, but pointed to the presence of a hidden network, one operating quietly and efficiently. Hints of an organized disappearance. Evidence suggested Rafiq had been intentionally made to vanish. His usual routes were avoided, surveillance was coordinated, those who might have helped him were silenced. The mystery was no longer just about a single person. It involved a system of secrets, fear, and manipulation. Ends on a chilling note. Rafiq's vanishing was deliberate, methodical, and orchestrated, but by whom and why remained unknown. First breakthroughs, evidence, leads, and the shadows unveiled. Months had passed since Rafiq Ahmed disappeared from Dhaka. The case, once quiet, now held a growing tension, a mix of fear, frustration, and faint hope. In Chapter 5, the investigation begins to gain momentum as new evidence emerges, slowly lifting the veil on the forces that orchestrated his vanishing. Revisiting witnesses. Investigators realized that the initial accounts were fragmented, inconsistent, and incomplete. They began revisiting witnesses with a new approach. Interviews were carefully cross-checked, allowing small inconsistencies to reveal larger patterns. Some previously silent neighbors, now reassured about safety, disclosed crucial details about strangers frequently seen near campus, that a rickshaw puller remembered the unusual white microbus near the alley where Rafiq disappeared, a detail initially dismissed as insignificant. Each testimony added a piece to the puzzle, slowly reshaping the timeline of Rafiq's last known movements. Phone records and digital footprints. Forensic analysis of Rafiq's phone revealed patterns that had previously gone unnoticed. Repeated calls from untraceable numbers, brief, unexplained disconnections that coincided with key encounters, locations linked to temporary shelters outside Dhaka City. This digital trail pointed to a network of individuals orchestrating his disappearance. It was clear Rafiq had been monitored, tracked, and eventually led into controlled environments, a disturbing confirmation that this was no random abduction. Connecting the dots, extremist networks. Investigators began mapping connections between the phone activity, witness sightings, and known extremist cells. Some of the numbers have been traced to areas where young students had previously been targeted. Temporary shelters and safe houses aligned with previous cases of forced disappearances. Authorities discovered similarities between Rafiq's case and a series of unresolved abductions of young professionals in the region. Patterns emerged. Surveillance, intimidation, and strategic vanishing were hallmarks of the group behind Rafiq's disappearance. Hints from unexpected sources. A breakthrough came from a seemingly unrelated informant, a former associate of the extremist network. He provided partial descriptions of the hideout where Rafiq was held and outlined the conditions of captivity. Though details were fragmentary, they gave investigators the first tangible leads in a case dominated by shadows. They learned Rafiq had been kept in isolation to prevent communication with the outside world. His captors monitored him closely, moving him frequently to avoid detection. Minor clues, like discarded SIM cards and partially erased messages, indicated a sophisticated operation designed to make him vanish entirely. The first rays of hope. By the end of Chapter 5, the investigation had transformed. The case was no longer one of mere disappearance. It had become a focused search for a hidden captive. Investigators had leads, patterns, and testimonies that, if followed correctly, could finally reveal the truth. For the first time, Rafiq's family felt a glimmer of hope, that after months of silence, he could be found alive. Ends with the story poised at a critical junction. The hunt for Rafiq moves from speculation to focused, high-stakes investigation. The subsequent chapters will explore the unfolding of this pursuit, the unraveling of secrets, and the eventual confrontation with the forces that orchestrated the disappearance. The long search, hidden camps, silent witnesses, and years of uncertainty. With the first tangible leads in hand, the investigation into Rafiq Ahmed's disappearance intensified. Chapter 6 delves into the painstaking, years-long process of tracking him, navigating a web of secrecy, fear, and false trails. Following the faint trails, investigators retraced Rafiq's last known movements. The white microbus, once dismissed, became a central clue. Records from rental agencies and witnesses revealed that it had been in the city on the day of his disappearance. Its repeated sightings near peripheral areas suggested it was being used to transport him quietly from one location to another. Tracing the vehicle took months due to false registrations, fake plates, and intentional misdirection. These early discoveries underscored a critical reality. Rafiq had been taken by a sophisticated network capable of eluding standard investigative methods. Uncovering hidden camps. As leads developed, the focus shifted to hidden locations where missing individuals could be held. Remote safe houses and makeshift compounds in rural outskirts were discovered, sometimes months after being abandoned. Informants described temporary relocation sites, small, secure rooms where captives were monitored but isolated from any contact with the outside world. Local residents occasionally saw unusual activity, new faces, odd deliveries, and sudden disappearances of transient workers or students. The network's meticulous planning made it nearly impossible to trace them without insider knowledge. Years of uncertainty. The search for Rafiq spanned years. Each lead required verification, and each informant carried risk. The captors often moved him to avoid detection, leaving behind little physical evidence. Families endured waiting, uncertainty, and fear, while investigators battled bureaucratic delays and limited resources. Every year that passed increased the psychological toll, yet the investigative team refused to abandon the search. Silent witnesses and coded clues. Many clues came indirectly. Discarded SIM cards, fragmented phone data, and vague reports of sightings in distant towns. Former associates of the Extremist network provided fragmented accounts, but insisted on anonymity due to fear of retaliation. Notes and cryptic messages discovered during the early investigation were later interpreted as attempts by Rafiq to signal his location without alerting captors. These clues required patience, careful cross-referencing, and an almost detective-like intuition to interpret correctly. Persistence amid obstacles. Despite threats, misinformation, and the deliberate obfuscation of captors, the team's perseverance paid off. A series of leads began to converge on a specific region, a remote village with previously overlooked houses. The combination of old witness accounts, digital data, and careful surveillance started to narrow the potential search area. Slowly, the hope of finding Rafiq alive, or at least discovering the truth, became more tangible. Chapter 6 closes on a note of tension. The search is long, perilous, and fraught with uncertainty, but the first meaningful steps toward resolution are underway. The following chapter will explore how investigators uncover critical evidence and piece together the final stages of Rafiq's captivity. bringing the case closer to resolution. Piecing together the captivity, hidden lives, and subtle clues. As the investigation into Rafiq Ahmed's disappearance progressed, the search began to focus not just on where he was, but how he was being held and why he remained hidden for so long. Chapter 7 delves into the painstaking detective work that uncovered the hidden layers of his captivity. Mapping the captor's network. Investigators realized early on that this was not the work of a single perpetrator. Rafiq had been monitored, moved, and hidden by a coordinated group, likely with links to extremist networks. Communication between members of the network was subtle, relying on coded phone calls and temporary meeting points. Safe houses were used in rotation, making detection nearly impossible without insider intelligence. Even local residents noticed oddities, but fear and intimidation prevented them from speaking out. The methodical nature of this network explained why the trail had gone cold for years. Signs of life in the shadows. Evidence began to suggest that Rafiq had been alive for much of his captivity. Partial phone records indicated intermittent access to his mobile device. Witness accounts hinted at occasional movement between safe locations, often at night. His personal items, a notebook, a few articles of clothing, were found discarded in places consistent with temporary relocation. Investigators carefully pieced these fragments together to form a timeline of his movements, realizing that he had been quietly signaling his presence without raising suspicion. The role of informants. Breakthroughs often came from unexpected sources. Former associates of the extremist network who defected provided maps, routines, and descriptions of temporary hideouts. Anonymous tips gave partial addresses and descriptions of the captor's methods. Combining these leads with digital footprints, investigators began to narrow down the specific region where Rafiq was being kept. Each tip carried risk, both for the informants and the investigative team. Yet these pieces were invaluable for reconstructing the hidden life Rafiq endured. Psychological impact of captivity. Beyond locating him, investigators also studied the psychological environment imposed by the captors. Isolation, fear, and strict control were used to prevent communication with the outside world. Rafiq reportedly was moved frequently to avoid pattern recognition. Captors maintained a strict schedule, leaving very few traces and ensuring the victim's presence remained almost invisible. Understanding this environment helped the team anticipate the captor's next moves and plan interventions safely. A glimpse of resolution. By the end of Chapter 7, investigators had finally identified a cluster of probable hideouts mapped. The captor's operational patterns collected enough evidence to prepare for eventual recovery. It was clear that while years of vanishing had left Rafiq physically and psychologically isolated, the trail was not lost forever. Closes with a growing sense of hope. With careful planning and persistence, the long-hidden truth could finally be revealed. The next will follow the critical breakthrough that brings investigators closer to Rafiq's rescue and the exposure of his captors. The breakthrough. Evidence emerges and captors' secrets unravel. After years of painstaking investigation, Chapter 8 marks a pivotal moment. The first concrete evidence of Rafiq Ahmed's location emerges, exposing the network that orchestrated his disappearance and setting the stage for his eventual rescue. Following the trail of digital clues, forensic investigators revisited old phone records, GPS data, and communication logs. What once appeared as dead ends now revealed subtle patterns. Short, repeated calls to disposable numbers traced back to a cluster of villages outside Dhaka. Inconsistent time stamps suggested coordinated movement between temporary hideouts. Patterns of electricity and water usage in certain abandoned homes indicated recent habitation. By meticulously analyzing these digital footprints, the team could identify probable hideouts and narrow the search area significantly. Informants come forward. Former associates of the extremist network, previously too fearful to speak, began cooperating as investigators provided guarantees of protection. Their revelations included safe house rotations and operational routines of the captors' methods used to prevent outside detection. such as removing or destroying evidence of occupancy names of key operatives involved in surveillance and transportation. These insider accounts gave investigators the confidence to plan an actionable approach. The first physical evidence. A breakthrough occurred when investigators located a discarded item of Rafiq's. A notebook containing cryptic notes and dates. Partially erased, but partially intact fragments of clothing match descriptions provided by witnesses. Small personal items indicated recent habitation, confirming he was alive at that location at some point. This evidence, combined with informant's guidance, transformed speculation into a targeted search, mapping the captor's network. The investigation team began reconstructing the hierarchy and operations of the captors, identifying leaders, intermediaries, and enforcers, understanding how safe houses were rotated to avoid detection, recognizing psychological tactics used to keep Rafiq compliant and isolated. The picture that emerged revealed a sophisticated, tightly organized operation that had effectively kept him hidden for years. Tension and risk. With the location identified, the stakes rose dramatically. Any misstep could alert captors and endanger Rafiq. Covert surveillance had to be maintained to ensure safety. The team had to navigate bureaucratic red tape, local complications, and the constant threat of extremism. This chapter captures the high tension and meticulous planning required before any rescue attempt could be undertaken. The sense that the longest, darkest part of the mystery is coming to an end. Investigators now have actionable evidence, a clearer understanding of the captors, and the location of Rafiq Ahmed, setting the stage for the dramatic events of the next chapters. The rescue, confronting the captors and uncovering hidden truths. After years of painstaking investigation, the next chronicles the dramatic turning point, the rescue of Rafiq Ahmed and the exposure of the network that orchestrated his disappearance. Covert surveillance and planning. With the location and patterns of the captors finally mapped, authorities began the critical phase of planning. Surveillance teams monitored the hideouts, noting daily routines, security measures, and potential escape routes. Investigators coordinated with special task forces trained in hostage recovery to minimize risk. Timing was critical. The captors' unpredictable movements meant that a single misstep could endanger Rafiq's life. Every piece of intelligence was scrutinized to ensure that the rescue could be executed safely and efficiently. The captors' network revealed. As operations unfolded, investigators began to fully understand the depth and sophistication of the Extremist network. Multiple operatives worked in rotation to monitor and transport Rafiq. Safe houses were equipped with basic necessities, but strategically isolated communication channels were tightly controlled, making external interference nearly impossible. The captors' meticulous planning explained why Rafiq had remained hidden for years and revealed the scale of the operation behind his vanishing. The rescue operation. The rescue itself was carried out with precision. Authorities moved quietly, approaching the hideout under cover of night. Key entrances were secured, and all exits monitored to prevent escape. Negotiation and tactical measures ensured that Rafiq could be freed without provoking harm. After tense moments, Rafiq was finally brought to safety, physically exhausted but alive. His rescue marked the culmination of years of investigation and tireless efforts by both his family and authorities. Uncovering hidden truths. Following the rescue, interrogations and evidence gathering revealed critical insights. The motives behind the abduction, intimidation, political leverage, and extremist ideology. The methods used to isolate and control him. Connections to other unresolved disappearances and prior criminal activity. This phase illuminated not only the fate of Rafiq, but also the broader network that threatened other vulnerable individuals. Impact on the family and community. The rescue had a profound impact. Reunification with family brought emotional relief, but also trauma from years of uncertainty. Authorities were able to act on intelligence to prevent further abductions in the region. Media coverage heightened public awareness about extremist networks and the importance of rapid intervention. Closing chapter thoughts. Chapter 9 closes on a note of triumph tempered with reflection. Rafiq Ahmed's return was a victory, but it also revealed the disturbing reality of the networks that had kept him hidden for so long. The final chapter will explore the aftermath, the legal consequences for the captors, the long-term impact on Rafiq and his family, and the broader lessons learned from the case. Aftermath and reflection, justice, recovery, and lessons learned. With Rafiq Ahmed safely rescued, focuses on the aftermath of the disappearance, the pursuit of justice, and the long-term impact on his life, family, and community. Legal consequences for the captors. Once Rafiq was recovered, authorities moved swiftly to dismantle the extremist network responsible for his abduction. Key operatives were arrested based on surveillance, witness accounts, and the intelligence gathered over the years. Some members faced prosecution for kidnapping, illegal confinement, and conspiracy. Investigators worked to link the operation to other unresolved cases of forced disappearances, shedding light on previously hidden crimes. The legal process was slow and challenging, but it signaled that organized networks behind disappearances could be held accountable. Recovery and rehabilitation. For Rafiq, freedom marked the beginning of a difficult recovery. Years of isolation had taken a psychological and emotional toll. He required therapy to process trauma, rebuild trust, and regain a sense of safety. Reintegrating with family and community was bittersweet, a mix of relief and lingering fear. His story highlighted the resilience of survivors and the importance of comprehensive support after prolonged captivity. The family's journey. Rafiq's family endured the most intense emotional strain. Years of uncertainty and fear left lasting scars. Their persistence and advocacy had been critical in keeping the case active. Their eventual reunification with Rafiq was a powerful moment of closure, tempered by the reality of lost time. Public awareness and policy changes. The case had a broader societal impact. Media coverage and international attention exposed gaps in student safety, law enforcement, and extremist monitoring. Authorities implemented new protocols for handling disappearances and improving response times. Public awareness campaigns educated communities on vigilance, reporting suspicious activity, and supporting victims. Rafiq's ordeal became a cautionary tale and a catalyst for systemic improvements. Reflections on the vanishing. The case of Rafiq Ahmed raises profound questions. How do individuals vanish in plain sight? And what enables their prolonged concealment? What can families, authorities, and society do to prevent similar tragedies? How do survivors reconcile with the years lost? And what does justice look like after prolonged captivity? These were the message of resilience, vigilance, and hope. While the trauma of abduction cannot be undone, Rafiq's story underscores the importance of persistence, careful investigation, and the unwavering pursuit of truth. It leaves viewers reflecting on the thin line between safety and vulnerability, and the courage required to bring light to the shadows.